Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Live Learning number 36. Super excited to have you here with us to talk about happiness, all things happiness with Declan. Really excited to introduce Declan shortly and jump into our conversation. But as always, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land where we're all gathering from today. And I'd love you to pop into the chat, as we do in all live learnings. What are the lands that you are joining us from? So I'm here in Meandrin on the land of the Yugara and Turrbal people in Brisbane. And Nick and I are both in the office today. Declan looks like he's in his home office as well. So jump on the chat. Let us know where you're joining from, the lands where you are. A reminder that we are recording today, so we will make sure that the session goes up at the end, and we would love to have you involved. It's really important to be involved today because we have copies of Declan's book, How to Be Happy, that we are giving away today. Super excited to send some copies around the country. All you've got to do to be in the running to get a book is just engage with us. Jump in the chat. Let us know how you're feeling. Ask some questions. I'm going to give you a poll question in a moment. So jump on, answer the poll, and just engage. We'd love for you to be part of the conversation today. It will keep the chat in the background being monitored. That's part of Nick's job. And we'll make sure that we can collate any of the ideas, the strategies, the tools, the resources that get mentioned today and send them out to you as well. So let's take a moment to actually have an opportunity to engage. So I want you to think about, on a scale of 1 to 5, here's your poll question. How much of a priority is your own happiness or well-being right now? From 1 to 5, so 1 being not at all, 5 being 2, it's a significant priority. Jump on, tell us what your number is, 1 to 5, and maybe what the reason is. Why have you picked that number? It'd be great to know how everybody is feeling, bit of a baseline for today. And while you're doing that, I will begin to introduce our special guest today, Declan Edwards, founder of the BU Happiness College, known as That Happiness Guy, happiness expert, speaker, positive psychology lecturer, and founder of BU Happiness College. Super excited to have Declan here. Now, I won't do any more of a bio read than that. I'm keen for Declan to jump on and tell us about himself. And, you know, what I'm super keen to know, Declan, as you jump on is what was the moment? When was the time when happiness became your life's work, or you really knew that this is where you wanted to go?
Yeah, look, it's a really good question because I like to tell people that I have what I think is one of the greatest job titles in the world, which is happiness researcher, or the media likes to call me a happiness expert. I have no end to my joy of when you're flying into a country and you have to write down what you do for a living on the customs form. I have no
Mm.
end of joy of writing down that I study and teach happiness science for a living. And I do wonder if one day some countries, immigration department's going to call me and be like, "What do you mean by this?" Because this is not a common job, right? Like when I went to school, it wasn't like I went to the jobs fair and said, "Okay, so I can
Mm.
be a carpenter, or I can be a dietitian, or I can study happiness for a living and teach happiness for a living." I stumbled my way into positive psychology and well-being research. I
Mm.
started in a Bachelor of Health at university and was learning a lot about how to help people look after their physical health and well-being. And what I quickly learned or realized was most of us have a pretty good idea what to do to look after our physical health, right? We know we should exercise, we know we should eat well. So the gap wasn't a lack of knowledge. The gap often came down to psychology. It came down to prioritization of
Mm.
time and resources. It came down to motivation. It came down to habit building. And I realized I hadn't learnt much about that during my years of studying my degree in health sciences. And at the same time, I've been wrestling with my own happiness for a long time. I am what I like to refer to as a recovering human chameleon. Other people call that a people pleaser. I'm very good at learning. Growing up, I became really good at playing the role of what I thought other people expected from me. And
Mm.
as a trade-off of that, I lost touch of who I was. I lost sight of my values, my strengths, what my definition of happiness was. I chased other people's definition of happiness and success for many years, and it didn't really work well for me. And so thankfully, at this same crossroads I was having professionally, I was having the same crossroads and challenge personally, and I was introduced to a great mentor who introduced me to the field of positive psychology and wellbeing research. And it felt like I was being given this toolkit that I wish I got earlier in life. And I went, hey, why
Mm,
did I not get exposed to this earlier? And he goes, honestly, because there's normally a big gap between academia and the real world. Like we've been studying happiness formally now as a science in positive psychology for over 30 years, but the average academic, paper is not read by that many people. I think some
mm.
estimates say that on average it's read by less than 100 people in its lifetime. So people spend their whole lives studying a field and then nobody reads it because, and I don't blame them, even in a field like happiness research, it's not particularly thrilling to go to bed at night and read an academic journal article. Like I don't know two people who do that for fun. So I went, okay, I want to learn more about this, but also spend my life figuring out how do we bridge that gap between what we're finding in the research and what people actually interact with
Mm.
and make it something that they can care about and utilize and make it practical so that we can, yeah, teach happiness more as a skill set in science and hopefully chip away at making the world as a whole just a little bit happier.
I love that. And thank you for unpacking that. I think there'll be a lot of people that will resonate with what you said around, trying to match in with what other people expect of you and your happiness. That's super fascinating. And I think we could probably dive into that concept a little bit further. I'm looking through the chat and I'm seeing lots of threes and fours and fives around that poll. So, that's the reason why people are here right now because they do want to prioritize their happiness and their well-being. So, kind of let's set the foundation on this. In the book, you talk about 5 skills of happiness. And so, for those people that don't know your work, haven't seen the book, can you give us a little bit of a breakdown into what they are? Tell us a little bit about them.
Yeah, definitely. So I might give a bit of backstory of how we even landed on five,
Mm,
because in the curriculum that we have at BU Happiness College, the social enterprise I run, our curriculum is built around 75 skills that we've found in the research are correlated with happier living. And when I first sat down to write a book about happiness research and happiness skills and happiness science, I went to my publisher and said, so our curriculum is built around 75 skills. And they went, there's no way you're going to write that well in a book. It would be the world's thickest book. And again, no one would read it. And so they set me the challenge of going, can you narrow it down to a foundational five? Can you narrow it down to five that tend to set a good starting point for a lot of the others? And I got a bit cheeky. I paired some up and, worked a few in there so we could really jam as much as we could into the book. But where we landed was the first skill is kind of the golden child and darling of soft skill and happiness science research. It's emotional intelligence, so the ability to recognize, name, and manage our emotions well. A lot of people have heard of that before. It's been so thoroughly researched over, the last 30, 40 years, and for good reason. It's showing really good results in people's well-being, their performance at work, even in how they show up in their relationships. So understanding your emotions more effectively, we knew was going to be a core skill we wanted to cover in there. The second one that I landed on was the skill of introspection. So the ability to look inwards and to understand our inner world. And the reason I chose that is because I think it's a skill that we're losing touch with as a society because we are living for the first time in human history in an era where the wealthiest companies in the world are built on the attention economy. If you go back 50 years, the wealthiest companies in the world were in resources, manufacturing, build. They weren't in monopolizing and monetizing people's attention. But now all the social media platforms, all the big, mass media, newspapers, all that, their money is based on can we get people looking outwards for answers rather than inwards for answers. And my worry is that tends to lead people to chase this societal definition of success and happiness rather than looking inwards and going, what do I care about? What do I think is happiness and success on my terms? And so we're losing this ability to connect back to ourselves and look inwards and understand our inner world, our thoughts and our feelings, our values, for example. The third skill we then landed on was the skill of being able to retrain your brain towards happiness. If there's one thing I can promise everyone listening to this, if there's one thing I would almost hazard to put on a billboard, if I could have every billboard in the world say something about happiness research, it's unfortunately what I would put on there is that your brain doesn't really give a shit if you're happy. That's not its priority. It doesn't care for happiness. That's not its goal. Our brain is really optimized towards survival, and sometimes that means it does some things that are not great for our happiness. It tends to ruminate on tough times and skip really quickly through good times. If you've ever noticed, if 10 things go well in your work week and then one thing went poorly, I guarantee you're not lying in bed at the end of the week going, oh, those 10 things that went so well. I'm so thankful for them. They're so great. Chances are our mind is spending a bit more time on the thing that went wrong. And that's because it's designed for survival. Thankfully, because of neuroplasticity, we know we can train the brain, we can change that. We don't have to get stuck in that. The fourth skill was then the skill of knowing yourself well. So I think a lot of people, they come to the college and I ask them, what do you want? What do you think would make you happier? And maybe I'll ask this, pop in the chat if this is something that you think is important for you.
Mhm.
Um, a lot of people say self-confidence is important to them. Like, I want to be able to be more confident in myself and trust myself and back myself and, like have really high self-worth and self-esteem. A lot of people go, that's valuable. And I was the same. I spent a lot of my life wrestling with that. And I went, this is something I want. Um, and then a mentor very early on in my life said, hey, you can't have confidence in someone you don't know yet. Like, if
Mhm.
you don't get to know yourself and understand your values and your character strengths and who you are as a person and what makes you unique from everyone else around you, you're basically trying to form a relationship with a stranger. So of course you're not self-confident. Of course you don't have high self-trust. Like, you don't know who you are yet. So we wanted to dedicate a chapter to that. And then last but not least was then going, hey, let's look at how we move forward from that and set a vision for our future. So it's a lot around goal setting, setting a vision that is aligned to your values and your sense of self to feel like you're living authentically. And I know that's a bit of a cliche these days, but there's so much research that shows when you feel like you're living in alignment with your best self and you're taking steps towards that, you tend to rate your life overall as happier than if you feel like you're living someone else's life or by someone else's definition of happiness and success. So, as a very quick run through, I think that was what 5-10 minutes to summarize a whole
Mhm.
book and 4 years of research on it. That's where we landed for the five most important skills. Obviously, they're not going to teach us everything we can know about happiness, but I think they're the best starting point for a lot of people.
Yeah, love that. Thank you for that foundation. And I think, look, if we think about the context of most of the people in the room are educators and teachers, and I think there will be elements, particularly what you said around training in, the brain is survival mode and training the brain to be happy. I think will be something that the teachers in the room will resonate with. So if we were to kind of get practical on that for a moment and just double click a little bit into that, is there one of those skills, maybe number three there, that actually moves people the most when they practice it? And let's think about it in the context of an educator
Mm.
in your work. Do you have anything that you can recommend?
Yeah, so the one that's most impactful when it comes to training our brain is to have a consistent gratitude practice. And let me promise you, if you're someone who's in this meeting rolling your eyes a little bit at that because you've heard so much about gratitude in the last few years, I was the same. I stubbornly fought gratitude for a while, and until it got to the point where I was like, man, all the researchers say this is good for people, and I happen to be a human being, so maybe this will be good for me too. And I kind of had to get out of my own way and realize that the reason I was resistant to it was quite frankly because I sucked at it at the start. Like, I'd sit down to try to write a gratitude journal or focus on things that were going well, and nothing would come up, or it felt really surface level and really flat. And then, I realized, like any skill, learning the skills associated with happiness, it's essential that you're going to go through a phase where you're not good at
Mhm.
it. Like, no one picks up a guitar and instantly expects themselves to be Jimi Hendrix. But when it comes to practicing things like gratitude or mindfulness meditation or any of these, tools that we have, we somehow expect ourselves to get it right the first time. And that's just not how we learn. And when it came to gratitude, the thing that made a difference for me, which I write a lot about in the book, and feel free for everyone on this session, feel free to steal it if you like it. I found having prompts really helped me with a gratitude practice. If I sat down to look at a blank page, particularly after hard days or stressful weeks, really difficult to do. The three prompts that I've been using now for about 8 years and teaching at the college and sharing with people is first and foremost, and maybe actually we can do this in real time. Feel free to put in the
Mm.
chat what your answers to these would be if you looked back on today. We're kind of at the end of our day, end of the workday. So if you look back on today, what is a small moment that you would easily and normally take for granted, but if you actually noticed it, you could feel grateful for it? So what this does is it trains our brain to look for all the little wins and joys. Because I think so often we gamble our happiness on the major milestones. Right? Like, I'll be happy when I have the pay rise, the promotion, the
Mm.
job change, the holiday. It's always in the big moments, but happiness is also cultivated in these little joys, these little day-to-day experiences that we often just take for granted. And so I encourage everyone to pop in the chat. What is a small moment from today that looking at it, you can go, I actually really liked that. And if gratitude feels weird for you,
Mm.
call it appreciation, or it was a nice moment. Someone said right now they can see the sunset. Gorgeous, right?
Mm.
My little gratitude moment from today, I've got a 14-month-old son at home who's currently fighting sleep like Muhammad Ali. He's a pro champion boxer at not sleeping. And he woke up this morning after finally going to sleep. And he's been so interactive in the mornings and so playful lately. And it was just, we had this really nice little moment that I could easily just take for granted and skip past. But if I stop, I go, that was a really nice moment. Let's enjoy that. The second category is who is somebody in my life that I'm grateful for. Now, this can be someone that you're really close to. It can be someone you had a passing human interaction with. It can be someone that you don't even really know personally, but they've just been positively impactful to you. I grew up, my mom's very into country music, so I grew up listening to Dolly Parton, and obviously, passed away over the last night. And I called my mom this morning and just had a really nice chat to her about, how she was processing that. And my mom's from the country, and this was a, big part of her life. And it was nice to just have that moment of connection with my mom and to just talk about music that had kind of shaped my childhood and a lot of my mom's life as well. And so again, I'd encourage you to point to that. Who is somebody in your life you're grateful for, and what's a nice moment you've had with them? And then the third one is often the hardest, and that's why I leave it to last because we kind of have to warm up the gratitude muscle to get there, which is what is something about myself that I'm grateful for today. And this could be, if anyone has ever wrestled with their body image, that was a huge part of my life. So this could be physical, learning to just recognize and appreciate the good parts of our body, which can be deep and meaningful, or it can be very surface level. I kid you not, I've written many a time that I'm grateful for the fact that I can grow a relatively even beard line. Like I've got friends, they're quite patchy, but I feel like I grow quite a nice stubble line. It's quite like it's nicely shaped, I believe. Or you can do really deep and meaningful about your personality. Like I'm so grateful. I believe I have a very high skill and strength in being able to communicate complex research in a way that is accessible and engaging and hopefully funny. Like hopefully people laugh at my jokes along the way. And I really value that in myself. And that was important at learning how to have a good relationship with myself. So again, I'd love people to take a moment, an
Mm.
hour after the session. What's a small moment that you're grateful for that you normally take for granted? Who is someone you're grateful for? And then what is something about yourself? And if you want extracurricular bonus points, go back afterwards and write why for each of them. Why out of all the nice little moments, that moment? Why out of all the people in your life, that person? Why out of all the great qualities in yourself, that quality? Because that's where it turns gratitude from something we kind of do as a checkbox into something you
Mm.
feel. I call it marinating in gratitude. You can kind of sit in it and actually feel it, and you get the benefit more. And then for extra bonus points, if there's any high achievers here, like type A is very, they want the A plus on it. So the A plus on this would be whoever you wrote down. Actually, can I actually get a little check? Say yes in the comments or in the chat if the person you thought of when I said, "Hey, who is someone in your life that you're grateful for?" If it's someone who's alive and you have their contact details. Say yes if that was the case. The person who came to mind that you're like, "This is someone I'm grateful for in my life." If they're alive and you have their contact details, say yes. Okay, we've already got some yeses coming in. So your extracurricular A plus, really nail gratitude.
Yep.
Tell them. Tell them. Send a message. Be like, hey, I was on this learning session today. I was on this live learning with this happiness guy, and I learned about happiness. And he asked me who I was grateful for in my life. You're who I'm grateful for. It saddens me that so often the best things we will say about the people we love is at their funeral. We need to stop
Mm.
doing that as a society. We need to get so much better at showing and expressing appreciation and gratitude to our loved ones before it's too late. So, for everyone who said yes, that's my challenge to you today. Like, tell them, tell the person that you thought of.
Love that. And we can tell they're all listening, right? That's a really great start. It's interesting how you talk about that because I've said before through leadership in schools, sometimes it takes the leaving a place to hear some of those stories of impact. And I've often said, wouldn't it just be different if we found the time to talk about that impact all the time? Because I think ultimately teaching's full of high achievers. You referenced that just before, but very high carers.
Yes.
Teachers really care about other people, care about young people. And so I think it's easy for a teacher to kind of be on a treadmill where they're giving of themselves a lot.
Mm.
I like what you said around trying to find that happiness of self, gratitude of what am I happy for in myself. Do you have any other suggestions of how to help people get off that treadmill and slow down and find those small moments and small wins?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad you bring it up. This might not come as a surprise to the people in this room, but it came as a shock to me a few years ago. So we've been running BU Happiness College now for 10 years, and we have members and graduates in 7 countries. And a few years ago, I sat down with my team and went, what's the most common profession that we see coming to the college for their own personal development, their own personal growth, for learning the skills and science of happiness, not only for their benefit, but to play their part in sharing them with others? And the most common profession that was at the college was teachers and educators. And I think it's because of what you said. It's a profession that tends to attract and reward people with a high standard on self. Sometimes this borders into high expectations, being a little bit perfectionistic maybe and high achiever, as well as a really high degree of care. And these are beautiful qualities to have if we know how to manage them well. But they're also qualities that if we're not managing them well, or if we're not being well equipped to manage them in terms of like resourcing through our work, it's a very quick path to burnout, overwhelm, exhaustion, compassion fatigue, right? We hear a lot about this in the industry. And so something I noticed when I talk about the 75 skills that we teach at the college that are associated with happiness, we group them into three categories. The first category is skills that are associated with your personal happiness skills. So this is about managing your own well-being, looking after yourself. This stuff like self-care, self-compassion, emotional intelligence and awareness, like all that would go in this category. Then the second category of skills is personal growth skills, which are about fulfilling your potential and feeling like you're growing and developing as a human being. So this is stuff around goal setting, habits,
Mm.
behavior change, right? Vision, knowing your strengths, knowing your values, right? Like this is about, hey, my well-being is good. Now I want to feel like I'm growing and developing and, self-actualizing, becoming a fulfilled version of who I am. And then the third category is what we call interpersonal happiness skills, which are the skills associated with supporting and playing our part in elevating the happiness of those around us. So this is effective
Mm.
conflict resolution. This is compassion, empathy towards others. This is, being able to form rapport and deep relationships and connection. Those will all fit in here. Over the last 5 or 6 years, we've been testing all 75 skills amongst our members at the college and looking at how they score in each of those groupings. And what we found very quickly is in the high care industries, so allied health, education, social work, not for profits, people tended to spend a lot more of their time and effort on the interpersonal happiness skills. Like, how do I support the happiness of my partner, of my children, of my team at work, of the kids that I lead and
Mm.
support as a teacher and educator? But they hadn't spent much time looking at the first two. And as a result, it was kind of like pouring from an empty cup. And eventually it became um, exhausting. Eventually it became fatiguing. If you've ever gone to the point where you just went, I just can't be around people anymore, the problem is not the people, as a heads up. The problem is we're trying to pour from an empty cup. And so I think what we need to do is be able to go, hey, how do we actually practice personal development skills or personal happiness skills and personal growth skills to lay a more solid foundation, not to go, I'm not going to look after the people around me, but so that you can look after the people around you more sustainably and more impactfully and not have it be at your own detriment. Right? Like that's what I'm
Mm.
interested in is how do we, yes, play our part in supporting the happiness of those around us, but do it in a way that's not detrimental to our own happiness. I'm going to quickly close that blind because that's quite a hot
You
chat to have with something
absolutely
interesting.
go
So,
for it.
but please ask another question or pop some chats in.
I'm going to give you a minute to reposition. I think I think that's fascinating. And if I connect what I mean, well-being's a bit of a buzz term that is in schools. And look, I'd love to kind of explore further what the connection is between happiness and what well-being looks like in schools, and what it looks like to lead happiness in a classroom. What might be a practical step for a person that's thinking, oh, I don't know how to do those first two. Where do I start?
Yeah. I mean, the first step to start is just get really curious about it, right? Like, so this is when we treat happiness as a skill rather than as an outcome and destination. I want to be clear on that
Hmm.
because a lot of people still, I think, make the mistake of thinking of happiness as a destination or outcome. And the easiest way to tell if you're doing that is something we call the arrival fallacy or the happiness trap, which is however you complete the sentence, I'll be happy when.
Hmm.
So I'll be happy when insert whatever you want at the end of it. And if you've ever noticed something funny happens, as we get closer to that benchmark we've met, what do? We celebrate for a second, or maybe not at all, and then we move the benchmark. And we're always chasing happiness, but not cultivating it. So one of the biggest realizations for me as I was early in this work and research was like, what happens if we stop treating happiness as an outcome of success and happiness as something to reach in the future? And we treat it as a skill that we can learn about and practice and improve here and now. And what I realized is it follows the same path as any other skill, which is there's four stages to skill development. Stage one is unconscious incompetence, aka you don't know what you don't know. You're like, some people you might already be in this stage before coming to this session, like, I had no idea that happiness was a skill I could learn about and get better at. I didn't know that this field existed. Congratulations, we've now thrust you into stage two, which is conscious incompetence, aka the suck. Conscious incompetence is when you go, wow, there's a lot here I've never learned about. There's a lot here I don't know. And that's an essential part. Like people forget, I think this day and age, people often think confusion is a sign of lack of intelligence, but confusion or not knowing is a sign of growth. It's a sign that you're learning something new. Like you have to go through a phase where you go, huh, I've never learned this. This is new to me. I
Hmm.
haven't practiced it much. Then at stage three, we have conscious competence, which is like, I can do it, but I really need to focus on it. Like I need to really put my effort in. And stage four is unconscious competence, which is like, I can do it without thinking about it. It's second nature, it's baked in. Think of the world that we would create. Think of the classrooms we would
Mm.
have, the education system we would have, the society we would build. If the skills that are associated and correlated with happier living, happier workplaces, happier communities were second nature to people. If people
Mm.
had practiced empathy, compassion, emotional intelligence, resilience, like, all of these 75 skills that we know from research are correlated with happiness, if people had been equipped with them and practiced them for a long time to the point where they're second nature, we would just be a better society. Now, in terms of how you do that well in a school, I actually don't know. I'm
Mm.
not a teacher. One of the most common questions people ask when they work with me is like, "Do you work with kids?" And I don't because it's not my area of expertise. I haven't studied that. It's not what I do really well. I work really well with adults, and then they pass it forward and pay on the ripple effect, right? But I think role modeling it yourself is essential.
Hmm.
Where I've seen it work really, really well is, and often parents will come to me and say, "Hey, my teenager needs to learn about this." I'm like, "Cool. How are you role modeling it at home?" Or like, "Oh, I wish my children in my classroom could learn about it." Awesome. How are you role modeling it to them? So like, start by getting curious for yourself and go, "Okay, I want to learn more about this." And then do the work of learning it. And look, I'm not saying it has to be with me and BU Happiness College. Like, just go and learn about positive psychology and well-being science. There's a whole field of positive psychology dedicated. It's called positive education, dedicated to the research of how we integrate happiness skills and well-being science into schools and into education. It's fascinating. So again, the research is out there. It's just it hasn't often bridged the gap between academia and the real world. And that's our responsibility as researchers. I think we need to do much better at that. But also, it's your responsibility as an individual to go, if I care about happiness, I need to
Mm.
go and dive into this. I need to explore it. I need to study it. I need to yeah, I don't know. People spend so much of their life studying the technical skills to be good employees. I think people should spend an equal amount of time learning the skills that allow them to be good human beings. And that might be a
Yeah.
bold thing to say, but like if you're going to spend 4 years at a uni learning to be a good teacher, spend 4 years minimum learning how to be a happy human. That'll benefit you for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I found that before you actually spoke about role modeling, that's exactly where my head went as an educator is, where have we as adults, teachers, people had the role modeling throughout our lives of, how to develop the skill of being happy. But at the same time, where are there opportunities for us to role model that for our young people in schools? And so I think that's fascinating. I'm going to quickly pause and just remind the group, if you want the book this session, make sure you jump into the chat, ask some questions. Cassie, I did see that there is a question there that we're going to jump to
Awesome.
in a moment. Declan, I'm actually super interested to know whether is there any popular advice around happiness or well-being that you see as making things worse? Are there any kind of I guess, yeah, poor practices that you could reflect on that you would want to challenge, things that people maybe habits that people fall into, etc. So you've done work around the world with happiness research. Is there anything universal that makes people unhappy?
Mm. So I'll split that into two questions. I think the first one is like,
Mm.
is there some things that are being spread around at the moment that are probably not good for people's happiness? I think there's two in particular. Um, One is anytime someone is very confidently telling you that this one thing is the secret silver bullet strategy for happiness, um, be very skeptical, right? In happiness research, everything we do is an experiment. It's a test. Even when people come to the college, I say, hey, look, we teach 75 skills that the research suggests are correlated with happiness. That doesn't mean all 75 are going to resonate with you. And that doesn't mean that something's wrong with you as a person. It might just be your personal happiness toolkit, your strategy for living a great life might not include that practice or that skill. And that's okay. Right. So I think anytime someone's coming out and just like oversimplifying it and saying this is the one thing that will change everything and you have to do it, then
Hmm.
I'd be very skeptical about that. I think the other thing too is sometimes just the oversimplification and almost just saying things almost too boldly with too much confidence. And the reason I think of this is whilst we have this great field of researchers and academics and professionals studying happiness and well-being, and they're not doing well at presenting it in a way that people care about. We have had this huge rise in the last 20 years of like well-being influencers and people that I
Mm.
think mean well, and do want to make a positive difference, but they don't have the research and the evidence base and the credibility behind them to do it safely. Like coaching is an unregulated industry. Anyone could literally wake up tomorrow and say they're a coach, which is terrifying. It scares me. My own industry terrifies me, just so everyone knows. I grapple with this regularly. So I look at people like Mel Robbins, Jay Shetty, like people like that, and I just go, "Oh, I think, yeah, this is not actually what society needs. And maybe this is a little bit more to line their own pockets than to actually make a positive impact in the world." Um, and it's again, it's the oversimplification of things. Let them as a theory, I think, has a place and a space for it. But to say that it should be used all the time and that's the one go-to move, I think is terrible advice and really bad for people. So yeah, I'd be mindful of that. In terms of globally, what's not great for people, two big myths that we've all been sold and many of us have bought. The first is that happiness is that you achieve through success. It's not, right? You will not achieve enough to suddenly find yourself at a happy place. I promise you, you'll just move the benchmark. It's more about how do we cultivate happiness now and still be successful and high performing. And the second one is we've been sold this idea for years now that happiness is an inside job and an individual pursuit. And I'm so passionate about challenging this because we know from the world's best research that one of the greatest impactors of happiness is our sense of connection to others and our sense of community. And so what I worry about is like we walk into a bookstore and there's entire racks and sections dedicated to self-help. What do you need to do as an individual to be happier for yourself? There's no sections dedicated to community help or to societal help, right? And I think that's where we need to start thinking about and being more intentional. Is like happiness is not something we do on our own. It is something we do collectively and in community, which is why I love being parts of conversations like this because we're doing it together at the moment.
Yeah, I love that. And I think you're hitting the nail on the head in the sense that what works for one person isn't necessarily going to work for another. And so that modeling to each other, the sharing of practices, and, that's what we can do in schools really well. There's a question here that's just come through around practicing happiness with younger children, and any scaffolding or learning that can be done. Any suggestions? I know you referenced before, you said you're not the teacher in the room, so you
Yeah.
often pass that over to somebody else.
I can share two that I've seen work well over the years. So one is from my own life, and I don't think my parents did this intentionally. I actually don't know why they did. I'll have to ask them one day. But growing up, we used to sit down for dinner at the table together every night. And before we could get dessert, and look, sometimes I'd make something up just so I could unlock ice cream and get dessert. But before we get dessert, we had to reflect on our day and share one good thing that happened, one challenge that happened, and how we approached the challenge. And I think the third category was like one funny moment, like what was something that was humorous or made us laugh. My parents were big believers in like trying to find laughter in each day. And at the time, I rolled my eyes so much. I was like, oh, here we go. Mum's going to ask me for a good moment and a bad moment and a funny moment in the day. But I look back on it now with so much appreciation and so much joy because it was literally we were doing a gratitude practice. I didn't know it at the time. We were kind of doing a reflective journaling practice in a way. We're also
Mm.
learning about resilience because we had to look at challenges and how we adapt to it. And, I credit my parents for that and laying that foundation. The second one I'll share of people doing this really well, we spoke earlier about emotional intelligence. I write a lot in the book about how you can't be intelligent about something that you can't recognize and name. And we actually have a huge emotional literacy problem in this country. So people being able to recognize and name their distinct emotions and be able to tell them apart from each other is a huge knowledge gap and skill set gap for people. You cannot think that you're going to manage your emotions well if you can't name them first. So there's a tool called the Feelings Wheel. It's free. It was developed by Dr. Gloria Wilcox in the 80s. I include a copy of it in my book. Um, it's designed for adults, but there are versions online. If you search the Feelings Wheel for children, there's versions that have been made for kids of different ages to help them build out their emotional literacy and build out their emotional awareness, which is such an important first step to emotional intelligence. If you want to help build emotional intelligence in children, you have to build emotional awareness and emotional literacy first. So I've seen a lot of the teachers who come to the college. They'll take a lot of the resources that actually this one I'm thinking of at the moment. She might be watching this as a replay because I know she signed up. Shelley is a teacher in New South Wales. And she regularly tells me about how she's taking all these tools she's learned for the college and adapting them into ones that are suitable for children and then rolling them out in her classrooms and in her school, which is awesome because that's the ripple effect of happiness. Those are lives that we now get to positively impact that I will probably never meet. So yeah, I'm very, very grateful for people like that doing great work.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, look, where my head went is a lot of the work that we do, particularly around capabilities for young people, is making sure that that reflection stage happens. But also, what I'm hearing you talk about is it's not just about reflection; it's about sharing and talking, and being vulnerable and modeling for each other. Yeah, that's a wonderful thought. Now, I am going to go back to the question that Cassie put in a little bit earlier, and I would encourage the rest of the room. We've got a little bit of time for questions. Is there any correlation with happiness and kindness?
There is. Yeah, there is.
Mm.
So kindness and altruism is very closely linked to happiness. They say in the research that, which is why, by the way, a whole third of our curriculum, when we talk about those 75 skills of happiness, a whole
Mm.
third is about interpersonal happiness, the role that we get to play in supporting the happiness of others. And we know that random acts of kindness, being altruistic and giving towards others, it's a circular relationship. So what we find is when people are happier, they tend to be more generous and giving and altruistic. And when people are more generous and giving and altruistic, they tend to become happier. So we don't yet know in the research the directionality of this relationship, but we do know there's a relationship where it seems to be that they feed each other and make this really nice pro-social circle where if people, are looking after their well-being well, if they're supported to feel their best, we do become quite giving. And I think that's for the majority of people. Like obviously there's some people in the world that just not great human beings. um, but I think for the majority of us, we wake up and we do want to make a positive impact on others. And we're more able to do that sustainably if our own happiness is supported. So, yeah, kindness and happiness go very hand in hand. It seems to be that they feed each other.
Awesome. One of the things that I actually would love to ask is there a happiness practice that you've seen that people tend to give up too easily on? Or something that, it's the I'm going to start this practice, but then it fades away quickly. Yeah. And is there a practice that you would recommend that people just stick through, going to push through that kind of tricky or sticky stage?
Yeah, the one that comes to mind straight away is meditation and mindfulness. Um, Again, so much research around it. And I was the same. Like, I'd try it for a bit, give up. I'd get a streak going on Calm app or Headspace and then give up. We know so much from the research now, like even to the point where they've done studies that look at the grey matter in people's brains and they can see physical changes in people's brains if they've been long-term meditators. Like it's one of
Mm.
the few things we see that restructures your brain in the areas that are responsible for emotional regulation, for stress response and nervous system management. The areas of the brain responsible for this are so much more developed and strengthened in people who regularly meditate. Now, the challenge for a lot of people is we think meditation and we instantly think, I need to wear a robe, sit under a waterfall, cross legged, hum, and shave my head, right? And that's not the case. You can be mindful at anything. One of the most mindful things I do each day, and I'm going to share this, and some people are going to not believe it, but my wife loves it. I find doing the dishes so mindful. Now, before anyone thinks I'm the best husband ever, can't stand doing the laundry. That's the trade off. I don't do the laundry, but I'm all about the dishes, right? For whatever reason it is, I'm not using my phone because my hands are in the water. I'm not thinking of anything else. I'm just present. It kind of gives my brain room to breathe. And the trade-off is that, my wife can do the dishes in half the time it takes me because I'm so like blissfully enjoying it that like it takes me twice as long. But whatever it is for you, where you find yourself fully lost in the moment and present and immersed in it, do more of that. Like that is a
Mm.
meditative and mindful practice for you. You don't have to get it through this like structured silent meditation. Of course, it's good if you can, but there's many ways to practice meditation and mindfulness.
Love that. So, mental note, everybody, go and find that thing that you can be mindful about. So, for me, Declan, it's probably mowing my yard, just going
Yeah.
up and down, up and down. Yep. Again, it's getting the phone out of the hands. Actually, I
Mm.
really like what you said about that because that's a practice I'm trying to focus on right now is putting my phone down and putting it away more. I can see Nick from the other side of the desk was probably nodding around that. Let's jump to the chat. We've got some questions now starting to come through. One here from MC around the scientific connection between pets and happiness. And why do pets make people happy?
Again, so what we find in the research is because of that sense of happiness is so supported by our connection to others, that doesn't just mean to other people, right? That
Mm.
means to any other sentient being. So when we have something to take care of, when we have something that we pour energy and
Mm.
attention and effort into, that is fantastic for our happiness. And also, there's a lot to be said about I think the connection and the love that we get from pets is pretty probably one of the closer things that we have to unconditional love. Like I can
Mm.
come home and no matter what the day's been, no matter how I walk through the door, my dogs are going to interact pretty well the same way. Um, yeah, so that's why we see that in the research, and it is well backed. That by the way, though, they've also found even taking care of a house plant. So if you're ever living somewhere where you can't have a pet, having something to take care of in your life is very important.
The house plant, it is. Okay. No, I've got the cat at home. My head went to the same thing around there is something unconditional about well, maybe more in dogs than cats. But anyway, let's not go down that particular tangent. We're getting close to the 4:45. There is a question here from Nick with the school connection. So bringing it back to schools, what can schools do to build genuine connection between staff? So rather than it feeling like just another well-being compliance check box, is there a genuine practice that can help build connection between staff?
Yeah, so I think there's three things that work really well for connection between teams at work. A lot of my work is I do a lot with workplace happiness and like workplace consulting and staff learning and development. What I've found that works really well for staff connection is you need strategies for three different categories. So the first category is do we all have something that we share that we believe in together? So that's either a shared direction, vision, goal, strategy. Like, do we have a shared sense of purpose? Because that's what allows us to feel like we're on a team. Now, by the way, being on a team doesn't mean you like everyone on the team. You don't need to all be friends and like each other, but it does mean connection is formed when we have something in common. So being able to go, this is what we're moving towards together, this is what we're rallying towards, super important. And if you haven't defined that clearly, we need to, right? So that's step one. Step two is have strategies that allow team members and help team members strengthen and lengthen and savor the good moments of their work. So, as you said, share the positive impact stories. I mean, in our team, we have in our weekly check-in, we share what was a win from last week. It's such a small thing, but like often I see organizations, their check-ins are all about what's coming next, what problem are we solving, what difficult behaviors are we dealing with, what's happening with this kid over here, and we don't leave room to go, hey, what went well last week, right? And it's probably there, we just don't notice it. So have strategies to strengthen the good and lengthen it, and also have strategies for how we approach and navigate the tough times as a team. So this is learning the skill of conflict resolution, learning the skill of radical candor, and learning how to have bold and brave conversations and not just ruminate on things. There's a lot to be said if we don't voice frustrations with each other in a team. Frustration, if left unchecked, will eventually become resentment. And resentment is toxic to teams' connection and performance and to the sense of well-being and culture in a community or in a school. So being able to go, hey, how do we actually communicate frustration in a way that is healthy and
Mm.
valuable and helps people grow? It is still uncomfortable. There's nothing that you can learn that makes uncomfortable conversations a breeze and a joy. I don't know two people who wake up and go, I can't wait to have that difficult conversation with this staff member or this parent. Right? But there are skills that you can learn to help you do it more confidently and more effectively.
Yeah, great. Thank you. And thank you for the questions coming through the chat. I think one of the things that I'm really picking up here, even with the fact that there were 75 skills that you're teaching, is that there is no one magic bullet here, right? There's no silver bullet. There's no one thing that's going to make all the difference, but it is a series of small things, the one percenters that will gather together to make some difference, make some impact. Wow, I'm conscious of time. That absolutely flew by. We always like to ask, I guess, the question at the end, Declan, which is, what's on your bookshelf right now, or what podcast are you listening to, or what resource are you engaging with that maybe could be interesting for our audience?
Yeah, I've got two books on the go at the moment. I always have a non-fiction and a fiction book on the go.
Mm-hmm.
So my fiction book at the moment, I'm currently rereading the Hunger Games series. I'll tell you what, reading that as an adult and in the current state of thought, I was born in the US, you wouldn't pick it from my accent, but watching some things happening over there, I was like, oh, we might be three generations from a real Hunger Games. So it's interesting rereading that as an adult. And secondly, my non-fiction book, Dr. Justin Coulson is someone who I highly look
Mm.
up to and love, highly recommend. He's one of Australia's leading positive psychology experts when it comes to parenting. He released a book this year called Boys, which is about how do we raise good men. Now, I mentioned before I became a dad 14 months ago. I have a son, so I have a young boy at home, and I'm looking around thinking, what does it mean to role model good masculinity and being a good man, especially in the state of what we're seeing in Australia at the moment? It's, everything happening in, I mean, the AFL is the one currently in the media, but many people would know that this
Mm.
is a story that is unfortunately part of Australian life and unfortunately part of Australian culture. And so I'm being so much more intentional and mindful about like, how do we yeah, it raise good men and raise good boys. And I think Dr. Justin Coulson just has such a good resource and good book on that. So highly recommend for anyone who has young boys in their life that they're trying to reach out and impact.
Love that as a recommendation. And love what you said around nonfiction and fiction. Hunger Games. So you weren't the only one reading Hunger Games, by the way.
I
That came
saw
up in the
that. I
chat
saw
too.
someone else
Yeah.
pop up.
uh, Look, Declan, thank you so much for being with us today. Fascinating conversation. I know that since I've connected with you earlier this year, I've been fascinated with your work and the things that you're putting through socials. So please keep going because we are watching, we are listening, and it is
Thank you.
wonderful. So thank you for your work in this space. Thank you for sharing it, making some connections to schools and to educators. For the rest of the group, we're super excited that we will have our next live learning, which effectively is going to be the TEDx live learning. As you may know, our CEO and founder, Nick Dyson, did the TEDx Brisbane earlier this year, The Power of Productive Friction. Our live learning is going to be all about that. We're going to dive into it. So that will be released soon. Watch out for that for September. In the meantime, we're going to dive into the chat and have a look who's getting books, and we'll announce that in our post-session email tomorrow. In the next 24 hours or so, we will get that out to you and let you know who has a book on their way. But ultimately, thank you so much for joining us for this live learning. Super excited for you to be with us. Thanks for engaging. Thank you, Declan. Wishing you all the best, and we hope to see you next time. Take care,
Thank you
everybody.
so much, everyone. I appreciate you all. Thank you so much.